Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Boogerman, a pick and flick adventure. The last part we started off with the game, and now I think we're in the third level of the pits, I believe that said. And this is a notable level because this is where they start to spam these guys. Two enemies in particular, that thing I just destroyed and that goblin jumping on a goblin. The goblin jumping on a goblin is not a very hard enemy, it just takes 2 stomps or anything to kill. But the little thing I just exploded is actually a surprisingly annoying enemy because of the way they're placed more often than not. Well, I'll go over why in a moment. The way they work is that they walk around within a specific area, obviously, as most enemies do. However, you cannot jump on them. They're the one enemy in the game you cannot kill by jumping on them. And the reason for that is this. They explode automatically, and you take damage. If you get too close to them, they explode, and you will take damage. If you throw a booger at them or fart at them, they will still explode and take damage like that. You're supposed to take care of them from a distance, because their little goopy explosion effect is actually what's damaging you. The animation is more or less how the hitbox works. Save like if I throw a booger at it, where the goo is generally where I'd be taking damage, but I believe it also goes a little bit farther out. And it's deceptive as to where the hitbox actually, like, stops being a hitbox still. Like, if I were to throw one at this guy, I think you're supposed to wait until the stuff's entirely gone to walk in the area, but I think you might still be able to walk where the goop is if there's only, like, say, tiny pixels of it left still. Either way, something that's interesting about this game is that it actually has a message from Boogerman in the manual, and it's basically there to say, hey, don't say we didn't tell you not to do this. Let's get into that. A message from Boogerman. As a superhero, there are many people out there in video land that look up to me, or down, as a role model. Why? I don't know, but that's besides the point. What I mean is, there are those who will try to imitate my superpower bodily functions. And now I want you to understand that I've spent many years training and studying under the masters whose names, by request, I won't mention. The fact of the matter is that if done improperly and without self-control, these bodily functions could cause property damage, mental suffering, and physical harm, not to mention ridicule and a loss of friends. I don't know. So remember, wherever there's grossness and wherever havoc is wreaked, no matter how bad the smell, I'll be there. Until they ask me to leave. And please, for the sake of your friends and loved ones, don't try this at home. Your favorite superhero? Boogerman. That has so much charm to it while also being a, hey, we told you not to imitate us kind of thing. It makes me wonder if they intended this to become a cartoon at some point. And given the art style, I could buy this being like a Saturday morning, really bad cartoon show. I wouldn't see it being quality. It'd probably be, maybe close to Captain N or Super Mario Bros. 3 show in terms of quality. But it would have been interesting to see. It makes me wonder if this game probably had a commercial out there somewhere, and I'm guessing that it was animated. Let's see if I can find one. One thing I should mention is that for the most part, obviously, there's only 4 levels per level, per world rather, and usually the 4th level is either the longest or the shortest. There's no real in between with it. Oh, hey, there is a commercial. I'm actually gonna watch this. Let's see what's going on here. Alright, got a guy dressed as Boogerman eating in a restaurant. Yeah, actually kind of reminds me of the Yoshi's Island commercial. That's a red hot chili pepper. That's not gonna be good. Wow, that's a lot of food. Oh, they're actually going for a heart. Oh, he farted a hole in the goddamn wall. It's accurate. Wow, the video footage of the game is horrible. Wasn't me. Ha. Okay, you know what? That was dumb, but it had charm. I'll probably see, if I remember to do it, I'll see if I can put a link to that in the video description, because that's about what I expected, honestly, but I'm not disappointed, per se. Also, for some reason, there's almost always an enemy at the end of the stage, but you don't always need to kill them in order to progress onto the next stage. Sometimes you can just walk through it. Mind you, I swear you can also jump over the loading zone that loads the victory screen. Either way, it's time for us to head on to our second boss fight, who is debatably my least favorite in the game, Revolta.
Aha! I'll get you, my pretty! Uh-oh!
Revolta, as usual, as every boss does, has 3 attacks. She can burp out a little thundercloud, which will strike anything below it. She can fire her face out like that, and she can jump across as usual. The pole vault is probably the hardest thing to avoid because I think it's probably the fastest out of all her attacks. I say she's the hardest, but that's just because for some reason, compared to other bosses, I have a hell of a time telegraphing exactly what she's going to be doing next. That might have to do with the fact that compared to other bosses, both of her attacks basically have the same tell, aside from jumping across the screen, obviously, because they all have to do with her face. Mind you, I also just don't like her because, my god, this game's voice clips are overall fairly good for Genesis standards, at least in terms of quality. But my god, her laughter screeches really start to hurt my ears after a while. Also, I should mention, I love this game's boss theme. Again, though, I like this game's soundtrack on the whole on the Genesis better than Super Nintendo, but that's just because, mind you, I feel as if, usually, whenever the bass was done well in a Genesis game, it was done really well because it makes it feel a lot more energetic. Which happens, I guess. It also just depends on the instruments using and all that jazz. Music production on old sound chips is weird. You know, I know very little about it, all things considered, too. One thing I'm glad about with the bosses in this game, though, is that usually they'll only start their little moving attack after either a certain amount of attacks or after you hit them. And I am very glad about that, because otherwise, these bosses would go on a while. Because they could accidentally spam their jump over and over and over and over. And now we're in Boogerville, which is possibly the most generic name in the game. Though I love this track, it's very funky. Either way, let's go over Revolta's boss bio in the instruction manual. Revolta, truly a fatal attraction. She has the hots for our leading man. That was not obvious at all. Having been turned down for a date once too often, Eugenia, ugly, had her sights set on revenge. While brewing a witch's love potion during a freak thunderstorm, she was struck by a lightning bolt that causing her to implode and hurtle head over heels into Dimension X-Crement. Attacks, lightning breath, PU attack, plain ugly, and ugly stick. God, that's stupid. Yeah, though, as usual, whenever it comes to these stages, the enemy you want to fear most, aside from these exploding guys, which have a name I'll get in a moment, is the living boogers, which are those little bouncing things. Let's see, what's the name of that thing? The pus creature. Oh, that's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. Oh, those enemies in the last stage? Yeah, that was fair. How was I supposed to know he was there? Ugh. Those enemies that kind of look like chili peppers in the last stage, those are scabs. It's here where one of Boogerman's main camera issues start to come into play, though. They start placing the pus creatures beneath the little slide ropes like that, meaning you might blindside yourself because you can't kill them by jumping on them. That is just plain dickish, I have to be completely honest. I mean, mind you, it's not like this is a game that's really too hard, because as I said, this is one of those games where you have limited lives and continues, yes, but a password, basically every stage has its own password from my memory, so it's kind of just in the middle there, where you can war of attrition it, but you really have to start learning some of the level design stuff. But I guess another issue that Boogerman has on the whole is that even though every area has its own aesthetics, which I do like that much at least, not many of them have very distinct set pieces within them that makes the levels, like, easier to remember where you are in comparison. The only thing I can really think of when it comes to that is two of the last levels and the first level, because I always remember the nose being there. Which I guess is just a danger you run in a lot of older platformers where they had a lot of limitations to work with, which, mind you, I do think limitations can make things all the more ingenious because you have how you work around them. Indeed, I even mentioned Satoru Iwata with fitting Kanto in the gold, silver, or crystal because of the compression thing he made to make sure they could fit Johto completely. But yeah, which I do miss days of ingenuity like that. Not to say we don't get still ingenious stuff in games, but due to the fact we have so many less, or at least much less strict limitations to work with, we find ourselves just kind of working with the flow in some ways. That wording both feels right and wrong at the same time. I know what I'm talking about, but I guess I just can't find the words to say it too easily, which is an issue I actually often have when talking to friends. That's always actually an animation that I get a little kick out of when he falls like that. Boogerville's major addition, I guess, in terms of the gameplay though, is that this is the stage where they start introducing bottomless pits in some form or fashion. More often than not, in this stage and the next stage especially, well, world rather, there are places you can fall into a little green river beneath you. I guess it's like it's supposed to be a snot river or something. Either way, it's instant kill if you fall in it, obviously. Here in Boogerville, it's not too big of an issue, but in the next stage, oh god, the control. This game controls very well, but there's one hitbox that just does not work too well with, actually no, two hitboxes that don't work too well with it, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Now, one thing I don't really find myself using too much in Boogerman, just because I don't think it's that useful, is that when you get the red pepper, I know I mentioned that you could do this earlier, you can jump and press the C button, or at least whatever you have fart mapped to basically fly around for as long as your gas meter can support you. And that sounds like it would be very useful, and in some cases I guess it could be if you're trying to do like speedrun stuff or skip sections. But when you're just playing the game casually, the most it can do is maybe lead to a couple of plungers, I gotta be honest. There's not real much it can do for you. Which, mind you, I guess that exploration could be considered something, but this is not the kind of platformer I'd say exploring is very worth it in. If it was something more like Mario World, where there's additional exits, Rayman, or at least the Rayman platformers, where there's bonuses for you to get that actually matter towards completion, or like something like a Metroid game, yeah, obviously explore, but for a game like this, it just feels not needed. You know what this stage always kind of reminded me of, though? ToeJam and Earl 2, Panic on Funkatron, which I know is a game that's either love it or hate it. But growing up, I actually didn't own, well, we didn't own, rather, ToeJam and Earl 1. We only owned Panic on Funkatron. And for some reason, the graphics on the little stone texture on the houses in this level, this world rather, always reminded me of Panic on Funkatron. And I think it has to do with the little, like, weird brain sponge things you can jump on and do flips on in the first worlds of ToeJam and Earl 2. Which, you know what, I can see that a lot. But either way, here's the green snot river you don't want to fall into. You don't have much of a chance to do so unless you miss a jump really badly, but watch out for it all the same. Also, I forget if I mentioned this or not already, but those little, like, pink things you see me jumping on or throwing boogers down on the ground every now and then, those I think are just called pimples or zits, I forget exactly what. But they're there just for score. They don't give you anything else. You get, I think, both a score for jumping on them and then an extra score for jumping on multiples of them at the end of a stage. But honestly, I think score in this game is actually useless unless I'm forgetting something from the manual. Because I don't think it gets you extra lives at all. I'm looking around in the manual and I don't see anything about that. Yeah, I don't really see anything like that. Although one thing I should mention is that this game actually has an options menu you can access during the main gameplay. And the way you do that is you pause the game, and then you press the B button. It'll drop down from the top, and you can turn on or off music and sound effects, change to stereo or mono, turn off your little status effects, or just quit the game outright. And honestly, that's kind of a rare thing to see in a Genesis game like this. That's a very modern idea, all things considered. I forget if Earthworm Jim had something like that, because that's another game these developers did, and honestly, graphically, there are quite a few similarities in some things between the two games, particularly how well the characters are animated, and Boogerman's jump animation, now that I think about it, is actually fairly similar to Earthworm Jim's, just with less frames added into it. Though I was actually I was talking about it with my friend Wheatbread, or Incognito, she now goes by. The girl I had along for Mega Man 1 of the Wily Wars. And I actually found a sprite sheet for Boogerman himself. He has a shitload of sprites. Some that weren't even on the sheet I found on, like, Spriter's resource. It was very impressive to see. Mind you, I thinking about it, though, I suppose basing the animation of a game just off the main character can be a bit unfair, because obviously you're going to put a lot of attention graphically into the player character, at least you should, because it's going to be the thing the player's going to be seeing the most, therefore it should have a lot of good things looking for it. Also, I actually oddly know how to get to the bonus total in this stage. I think around this point you have to drop down and head left along some vines. I think. I might be thinking of a later level, which in this game is fairly likely, because as I mentioned, something that I don't like about Boogerman is that they don't really add much to the game as they go through. What you get from the start is what you get at the finish in terms of platforming gimmicks and ideas. They get a bit more complicated with what they do with them, yeah, but there's no real stage-specific gimmicks or introductory gimmicks, except for like 1 or 2. And that's it. And those don't come into play until basically World 4 of 5. And that's a bit sloppy. Just like that pus creature. Ugh. It always is kind of funny, though, to tell people about this game, because my friend Anthony, I specifically remember I told him the name of his adventure, and he just kind of gagged a little bit. Sometimes video games do good things like that. Also, there was the loading zone me not hitting, apparently. That was weird. Either way, with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we're going to be finishing off Boogerville before heading off to World 4, which is a rather unique world, to say the least. See you guys then.